worst kind of violence is the one dressed up as laughter. Ever witnessed cruelty disguised as a joke? Let us know in the comments section below. Yo, what even is that walk? Cody Markham's voice sliced through the corridor like a razor disguised as a smirk. He leaned against locker 212, arms folded, a glint in his eyes that never spelled good intentions. Around him stood Trent Bailey and Jackson Miller, his loyal shadows. One always laughing too loud, the other always looking away, pretending he didn't hear what he just heard. Cody wasn't the loudest kid in school. He didn't have to be. That smirk of his did all the talking, and when he stared someone down, people flinched. Some inwardly, some openly. He had the kind of power that wasn't earned but inherited by being tall, white, rich, and mean. Katy Winslet didn't flinch. She walked past the group with her shoulders back, eyes forward, backpack heavy on one side from the books she always carried, even the ones teachers didn't assign. She didn't look at Cody, didn't respond, she just kept moving. And that made it worse. And she can't even blink when she walks past, Trent laughed, nudging Cody's elbow. She ain't mute, Cody muttered under his breath. Just thinks she's better than the rest of us. Jackson shrugged. Or maybe she just doesn't want to talk to you, bro. The hallway fell into a beat of silence. Cody turned his head slowly toward Jackson, his face unreadable for a second too long. Then he smiled, wide and sharp. You sayin' I'm not her type? Jackson quickly looked down, mumbling something about class. Cody wasn't done, though. He pushed himself off the locker and started walking behind Katy, mimicking her steps. One slow, deliberate movement after another. His hands exaggerated the sway of her arms, making Trent double over with laughter. Katy kept walking, but her jaw clenched. Her fingers curled into the straps of her backpack. She heard everything. She always did. Fourth period. Mrs. Leland's classroom smelled like old markers and half-wiped whiteboards. Katy took her seat in the back, where the sunlight barely reached. It was the seat she always took, the one that made her feel like she could still go unnoticed, even when the world insisted on noticing her for all the wrong reasons. "Hey," came a whisper. Jules Ramirez had slid into the desk beside hers, a bright blue scrunchie wrapped around her wrist and a look in her eyes that could have burned holes in titanium. "You okay?" Katy didn't answer right away. She pulled out her notebook, flipping past doodles of dragons and sunflowers and fists. "I'm fine. Your fine face looks like it wants to punch a brick wall." Katy allowed the corner of her mouth to twitch. Not a smile. Not really. "Cody again?" Jules asked. Katy nodded once. "Why is he always on you like that?" Jules' voice was a blend of anger and confusion. "I mean, what's the deal? You don't even talk to him." "That is the deal," Katy said, her voice barely above her breath. "He can't stand it." Across the classroom, Cody stared at her. No smirk this time, just studying. Watching. He hated not being seen. He hated being ignored more. It was like the girl didn't understand how this game worked. She was supposed to get flustered. She was supposed to break. But Katy Winslet? She didn't break. Not when they threw wood. Not even last spring, when they shoved her binder down the stairs and it exploded across 3 landings. That girl picked up every single paper without crying, without giving them the satisfaction. And that's what pissed him off the most. Katy's feet tapped quietly under her desk. 1, 2. 1, 2. Her body was still, but her mind moved like a fight reel on repeat. Grandpa said silence is a kind of power. That letting someone run their mouths while you hold your center is its own kind of strike. But this wasn't sparring. This wasn't the dojo. This was high school, where silence could get you flattened. Still, she breathed, focused, just like she'd been taught since she was 6. Control is stronger than rage. Lunch came. The cafeteria buzzed. Students filtered in like pixels, forming a blurry image of teenage chaos. Katy sat with her tray. Grapes, sandwich, juice. She didn't eat much during lunch. Not because she didn't want to, because she couldn't. Not while eyes were on her. Not while something could be said, spilled, or snapped. She felt Cody's presence before she saw him. He passed by her table slowly, tray in hand, then accidentally knocked her juice over with his elbow. "Oh, man, sorry," he said, voice syrupy sweet. "Didn't see you there. You're just easy to miss, you know?" Her juice pooled across the table. Sticky, bright. Katy stared at it. Then up at him. She said nothing. Wiped it up. Didn't blink. In that silence, it made Cody twitch. That night, Katy sat cross-legged on the mat in her grandfather's studio. The room was lit only by the soft amber glow of the corner lamp. Franklin Ellison, legendary blackfelt, sat across from her, pouring tea into a small ceramic cup. His knuckles were thick with history, his posture straight as ever. "Hey, scout it," he said again. Franklin nodded, not asking who. He always knew. "You hit him?" She shook her head. "No." Good." He took a slow sip. "Because hurting someone isn't hard. It's holding back that shows strength." Katy exhaled, chest loosening. But she also knew that strength had a limit. And she was close. So close. Katy wasn't the kind of girl people volunteered to partner with. In Mr. Blevins' fifth hero history class, group projects always brought that awkward shuffle. That few-second pause when everyone glanced around, eyes darting, minds racing with silent calculations about who they could tolerate and who they absolutely wouldn't be stuck with. It happened every time. So when the teacher said, "Pair up," Katy already knew what would happen. Everyone moved. Desks scraped the floor. Names were called. Whispers zipped through the air like gossiping bees, and within 20 seconds she was the last one sitting still. Again. "Ms. Winslet," Mr. Blevins said, sounding tired. "Looks like you'll be working with Cody and Trent. They're short one." Katy didn't flinch, but inside, her gut twisted into something cold and tight. She looked at Cody. He looked back. His grin was small and sour. "Oh, awesome," Trent said, already snickering. "We got the mute ninja girl. Sweet." Katy stood and walked over without hesitation, pulling a chair to their corner of the room. She didn't sit too close. She never did. Cody leaned back in his chair, balancing it on two legs like someone who thought the floor itself obeyed his confidence. "So, Katy," he said, dragging her name out like syrup, "what do you know about the Revolutionary War?" "More than you," she said quietly. Trent cackled. "Damn, she does talk." Cody chuckled, but his eyes narrowed, not with amusement, with calculation. "Cool. So she's got opinions," he said. "That'll make this easier. You can do the whole thing, and we'll put our names on it." Katy didn't react, didn't even look up from the textbook she opened. She skimmed a few lines, grabbed a blank sheet of paper, and started outlining the key dates and names. She'd done this before. This wasn't new. "You're just going to do it?" Trent asked. Katya nodded. Trent blinked. "That's kind of weird." "She's not weird," Cody said, his voice low, his gaze still locked on her. "She's just used to handling things solo, right?" Katy finally looked at him. "I don't need you," she said. That was when Cody smiled again. Different this time. Not mean, not loud. It was the kind of smile that people wore when they were figuring out a riddle and knew they were getting close to the answer. "Yeah," he said softly. "That's what makes you interesting." The bell rang 20 minutes later. Katy packed her things and left without saying a word. She walked the halls with purpose, always with purpose, so no one mistook her stillness for fear. Behind her, Cody and Trent lingered by the lockers. "You think she's on the spectrum?" Trent asked. "She's like weird." "Weird?" Cody didn't answer right away. He stared at her retreating back. "No," he said after a moment. "She's hiding something." Trent snorted. "Like what? Secret government agent? Alien?" Cody didn't laugh. That night, Katy stood in front of the mirror in her room. Her knuckles were red from 1,000 invisible battles fought against a canvas of air. The sleeves of her hoodie were pushed up to her elbows, revealing forearms lined with the quiet strength of someone who practiced patience like a religion. She stared at herself, not smiling, not frowning, just assessing. The mirrors didn't show fear, but she felt it. Not because of Cody, not because of school, but because of what she was trying not to become. She reached into the drawer of her desk and pulled out an old photo. A young girl, smaller and wide-eyed, grinning beside her grandfather in a dojo. Her belt was too big for her waist. Her hair was frizzed out and wild, but the look in her eyes was focused, serious. She missed that girl. The version of herself before high school tried to shrink her, before she learned that silence was both armor and a coffin. The sound of the front door opening snapped her back to the moment. Footsteps padded across the hardwood floor. Her grandfather. She slid the photo back into the drawer and closed it softly. Downstairs, Franklin was heating water for tea. His movements were always slow but exact, like every gesture mattered. Katy joined him, wordless. He placed a second cup down without needing to ask. After a moment of silence, he spoke. "Your silence today. It was solid. I didn't feel solid. You weren't supposed to." He poured the tea. "You were supposed to hold your center. You did." Kate looked at him, her voice cracking just slightly. "How do you know when you're holding your center or just hiding behind it?" Franklin smiled, faint and sad. "That's the question fighters don't ask until it's too late." The next day, something shifted. At lunch, a girl tripped near Katy's table. Her tray clattered. A carton of milk spilled across the floor. Everyone laughed, except Katy. She stood up and reached down, helping the girl collect her scattered apples and paper napkins. Jules stared from across the room. So did Cody. "Thanks," the girl mumbled. He nodded, then sat back down. It wasn't much, but it was something. Small cracks, a shift in the wind. And Cody noticed it, because for the first time she broke her routine, and the one thing a predator hated more than silence was unpredictability. Katy didn't sleep much the night before the winter formal. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, tracing each hairline crack like it was a fault line, waiting to split. Her room, dark and still, pulsed with quiet questions she couldn't answer. Her fists rested on her stomach, fingers sore from hours of training, yet she hadn't thrown a single punch, not in real life. Not yet. At school, the halls buzzed with fake snowflakes taped to lockers and boys tripping over their own pride to ask dates last minute. The gym was being transformed with silver streamers and shimmering lights, but all Katy could think about was the tension humming in her spine. Something was coming. She didn't know when, but her body did. Cody hadn't said anything all week, and that was worse. He hadn't mocked her in class, hadn't spilled anything on her in the cafeteria, hadn't even bumped into her in the hallway with one of those fake apologies. He was waiting. The silence stretched like a rubber band between them, tighter every day. "Are you going?" Jules asked, walking with her to third period. "Depression." Katy blinked. "Where?" Jules rolled her eyes. "To the dance, obviously." "No." "Oh, come on, Katy, it's not a marriage proposal. It's just 2 hours in a sparkly gym with mediocre music and stale punch." Katy smiled. That's not helping your case. Jules grabbed her arm before they split down opposite hallways. Just think about it. Everyone's so busy being seen, maybe showing up and not playing dead is the loudest thing you can do. Katy didn't respond, but the words hung with her. By the time sixth period ended, she already knew. She was going. Franklin raised an eyebrow as she stepped into the living room in her black hoodie and jeans, holding a garment bag. "Formal combat?" he asked. "School dance," she said, tossing the bag onto the couch. "I need a ride." Franklin sipped his tea and stood up, groaning as his knees popped like old furniture. "You wear that, and you'll disappear into the walls," he said, nodding at her hoodie. "That's the idea." He gave her a look. "You think shadows can teach people respect?" "No," she said, voice firm. "But I'm done pretending they don't see me." Franklin looked at her for a long moment, then nodded once and turned to get his keys. The gym was already half full when she walked in. People stopped. Not everyone, but enough. She wasn't in heels, wasn't in a gown. She wore a plain black dress with boots and her hair pulled back tight. Clean, clear, ready. She scanned the room, ignoring the clusters of whispers as if they were fog. She found Jules by the drinks, bouncing to the beat of a song that barely deserved it. Her eyes lit up. "Holy crap, you came!" Jules hugged her, then backed away, holding Katy's arms. "And you look like someone who came to collect souls." "Just here to stand in a corner and judge," Katy said. "Good. That's my plan too." It wasn't until the third slow song that it happened. The room dipped into quiet under the hum of synth music. Lights spun lazily above as couples swayed and laughed. And then, like the sound of glass cracking from across a canyon, came a voice. "Surprised you showed." Katy turned. Cody stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, eyes locked on her like she was a puzzle he'd nearly solved. "Didn't think this was your thing," he added. "I can surprise people." "That's true," he said, stepping closer. "You've been surprising me all year." Jules saw him and started walking over, but Katy lifted a hand. It was fine. She could handle this. "You know what I've been wondering?" Cody said, his voice lower now, like they were sharing something intimate instead of cold. "Why you never fight back?" Katy stared at him. "What would that prove?" "That you're not afraid." "I'm not." He took another step. "I think you are," he said. "Not of me, of what you'll do if you ever stop pretending to be better than us." "Is that what you think I'm doing?" she said, barely raising her voice. "Pretending?" Cody leaned in, close enough that she could see the flicker of something. Something anxious behind his smug smile. "I think you've got more in you than you want anyone to see." And then, with casual cruelty, he dropped his next line like a bomb wrapped in velvet. "Especially if people knew who your grandpa really was." Katy's breath didn't catch, her eyes didn't widen, but her spine straightened. "You've been looking into my family?" Cody shrugged. "It's a small town." And just like that. It wasn't about juice spills or group projects or quiet bullying anymore. It was about digging. It was about lines. And he had just crossed one. "What are you trying to do?" she asked. Cody tilted his head. "Trying to see who you really are." Behind them, people were noticing now. The DJ lowered the volume. Phones started to lift. She saw it all, in the reflections, in the silence. The moment she'd been waiting for had arrived. She stepped back. Not in fear. In control. "I hope you're ready to find out," she said. And then, like a fuse snapping, it all happened fast. Cody took another step. Too close. Too smug. And Jules shoved her way between them. "Back off, Cody," Jules said. "We're not doing this tonight." Cody grinned, looked past her at Katy, then turned his palms up. "I'm not doing anything. Just talking. But everyone was watching now, and everyone was recording. And Katy didn't need to touch him. She'd already won, because now he was exposed, face flushed, cornered by silence and glassy-eyed witnesses. The kind of moment you don't get to walk back from. The kind of moment that shows exactly who someone really is. And she hadn't lifted a finger. Not yet. The video spread faster than wildfire. By morning, Katy Winslet's name was no longer whispered in passing or dismissed like a breeze. Now it echoed. The footage was short, 30-second seconds, but enough to change the landscape of Pinewood Ridge High. Cody standing too close. Jules stepping in. Katy's calm, steady stare. And the words that struck deeper than a punch. I hope you're ready to find out. It was in the pauses between those words that everyone realized something had shifted. People who had never spoken to Katy before started offering quiet nods in the hallways. Not admiration, not awe. Something softer. Respect. Cody didn't come to school that Monday or Tuesday. Rumors flew. His parents were furious. The school board had been contacted. Someone mentioned suspension. But Katy didn't feed the gossip. She didn't need it. Instead, she sat beside Jules at lunch, their trays mirroring each other for the first time. Jules had brought a second apple. She slid it toward Katy with a grin. Victory fruit, she said. Terry snorted. That's not a thing. It is now. By Wednesday, Ms. Leland announced a new extracurricular activity during the morning announcements. Starting next week, she said, a voice crackling over the intercom, we will be offering a self-defense workshop after school, led by a student volunteer and supervised by Mr. Connors in the gym. Katy froze mid-step in the hallway. Then, as if by gravity, all heads turned toward her. She hadn't signed up, hadn't even spoken to the principal. But she knew who had. Franklin was already at the stove when she got home that night. His kettle whistled, soft and steady, and the smell of jasmine tea drifted through the air. They want me to teach, Katy said, setting her bag down by the door. Franklin didn't turn. Of course they do. She walked over slowly, unsure whether she felt honored or ambushed. Did you talk to them? Franklin set 2 cups on the table and poured, without answering immediately. I told the principal you've been training for a long time. I didn't say what you'd decide. That part's yours. Katy sat across from him, her fingers curling around the warm mug. I'm not a teacher. He smiled. You don't have to be one yet. You just have to be willing. Katy looked out the window. The wind nudged the tree branches gently, like fingers combing through tangled hair. I was scared it would make things worse, she admitted. Being seen. Franklin's voice was low but firm. You were never invisible. They just wanted you to believe you were. She stared down into her tea, watching the ripples settle. I want to do it, she said finally. Franklin nodded. The first workshop had 3 students. Jules, obviously, then a freshman boy named Elijah who barely made eye contact, and a girl from Katy's English class named Denise who asked if she could just watch for now. Katy didn't care. She showed up, barefoot on the gym mats, ponytail tied high, wearing a black t-shirt and quiet confidence. First thing we learn isn't how to fight, she said. It's how not to freeze. Elijah blinked. Katy nodded. Most people freeze, not because they're weak, because they've never been taught otherwise. She showed them how to breathe, how to stay rooted, how to move without panic. Not strikes, not throws, just balance. By the second week, the group doubled. A few boys from the soccer team showed up, choking at first, but sticking around longer than anyone expected. By the third week, even Mr. Connors asked if she'd consider expanding to faculty. She laughed. but only a little. Cody returned in the 4th week. Katy saw him in the courtyard during lunch, sitting alone on the edge of the planter near the science wing. He looked smaller. Not physically, but in a way that showed. Shoulders not as square, head down, not talking, not watching, just there. She could have ignored him. She could have felt satisfied. Instead, she walked past him slowly and stopped. He looked up, startled. Katy didn't say anything at first, just stood there. Then she said, "I'm not scared of you." Cody nodded once. "I know." A beat passed. He looked back down at his hands. "I thought I was in control. Like if people were laughing. I had power. But after the dance..." He trailed off. Katy folded her arms. "What you did wasn't power. It was noise." Another pause. Then he said something she didn't expect. "I'm sorry." She didn't say it was okay, because it wasn't. But she nodded once and walked away. Graduation came in late May. The bleachers overflowed with proud families and bored siblings fanning themselves with programs. Katy sat between Jules and Elijah, now a sophomore and still painfully awkward, but taller and more confident. She was valedictorian, not because she was the loudest, but because when you show up every day, do the work, and refuse to shrink, people notice. Even if they don't say it. Her speech wasn't long. She stepped up to the podium, paper in hand, but barely glanced at it. "We live in a world that tells us to pick our battles," she said, "but sometimes the battle picks us, and we don't get to walk away." She paused, looked out over the crowd. But power isn't about fists or volume. It's about choice. It's about knowing who you are and not letting anyone else write that story for you. She looked at her grandfather. He nodded once. "To everyone who ever felt like their silence was survival," she said, "I hope you find your voice. I hope you use it." Applause rose slowly, then fully, not thunderous, but steady, like the kind of storm that doesn't pass quickly. Later that summer, on the last day before she left for college, Katy returned to the dojo. The lights were off, the mats were rolled up, but the air still smelled like cedar and history. She stood in the center, barefoot, alone. Then she bowed and smiled.